Week on For the Record. It's been a year since the deadly shooting at Abundant Life Christian School. After the tragedy that shook our community, the governor created the Office of Violence Prevention. We're sitting down with its executive director to talk about new resources for the state.
Really looking to find different ways that we can prevent violence in communities across Wisconsin.
And later, a special Senate committee is investigating the Wisconsin Department of Justice. What the majority leader thinks he'll find.
I've appointed 4 very diligent people on this committee to look into what's going on.
That seems to be a rushed process to try to score political points.
And a new major at UW-Madison, how it aims to work across the political divide. That's all coming up this morning.
Tough questions, real answers. Wisconsin's political conversations start here. This is For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Ellie LaLiberte. Well, a split verdict. That was a jury's final decision in the high-profile federal trial of Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan. On Thursday, a jury found Dugan guilty of felony obstruction for attempting to help an undocumented man evade federal immigration officers back in April. But the jury found Dugan not guilty of a misdemeanor count of concealing the individual to prevent arrest. It comes after days of work by prosecutors who have tried to show Dugan intentionally interfered with officers' efforts to arrest an undocumented immigrant. The case has also been highly politicized. FBI Director Kash Patel chiming in on Dugan's arrest back in April. Here's interim U.S. Attorney Brad Schimmel's reaction to the political nature of the case.
While this case is serious for all involved, it is ultimately about a single day, a single bad day in a public courthouse. The defendant is certainly not evil, nor is she a martyr for some greater cause. It was a criminal case like many that make their way through this courthouse every day, and we all must accept the verdict peacefully.
Now, Dugan's defense team also briefly spoke with reporters after the decision.
So obviously he's going to take this seriously as well, and I would just say the case is a long way from over.
Now, the judge in this case did not set a sentencing date immediately following the verdict. Dugan faces up to 5 years in prison on the obstruction count. And Assembly Republicans chiming in. Speaker Robin Vos and Majority Leader Tyler August released a statement that reads, quote, "The last time a Wisconsin judge was impeached was in 1853. If Judge Dugan does not resign from her office immediately, the Assembly will begin impeachment proceedings." This week, we're also remembering the lives lost in the tragic Abundant Life Christian School shooting a year ago. On December 16th, 2024, a teacher and student were killed and 6 more were hurt. Now, in the wake of that violence, Governor Evers created the Office of Violence Prevention. Now, the governor allocated $10 million in federal funding to support grant programs through the office. The applications for the grants opened earlier this month and aim to help, quote, connect the dots between state and local agencies. Now, there are 5 categories for these grants. That includes suicide prevention and firearms storage grants, evidence-based violence intervention and outreach programs, criminal justice-based initiatives, domestic violence prevention initiatives, and school-based programming. We sat down with the Office of Violence Prevention Executive Director earlier. So I want to get started and talk because obviously your office was created in the aftermath of the Abundant Life Christian School shooting. And I want to talk a little bit about what this past year has looked like in the wake of such a tragedy.
Yeah, so our office was created by the Executive Order number 254, where the governor created the Office of Violence Prevention on January 4th of 2025. As you may be aware, it takes some time to get positions created within state government, but that time was spent drafting the basic parameters for our grant program, which we released the other week. I was hired in October to really start with the concrete moving forward with the grant program.
This is not the first time we've seen an office come out of a tragedy like this. I mean, we saw former Governor Scott Walker create the Office of School Safety after the Parkland, Florida shooting. Let's differentiate these, though. I think that it would help our viewers to break down, okay, we have the Office of Violence Prevention and the Office of School Safety. What does yours specifically do?
We're really working on that collaboration piece to try to focus on having a whole government approach to anti-violence, to violence prevention and gun violence prevention. And part of that is also, as I mentioned, that grant program where Governor Evers allocated $10 million of ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, to further communities' violence prevention and gun violence prevention initiatives.
And let's kind of walk people through, I know these grants kind of came online earlier this month. Walk people through how that works.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that is key to this is we tried to make it as easy and simple as possible. The intention was to make it as broad and open to as many organizations that are providing violence prevention and gun violence prevention services, including suicide prevention.
When you think about a state agency for violence prevention, why is this something that the state should step in and be a part of?
I think that is a wonderful question, and we're seeing that, there is such change at the federal level to what sorts of grants are available for violence prevention. So we're seeing states that are stepping up and really putting a priority on ensuring that there are funds allocated for violence prevention. And I think the important piece about a state agency is that we can work with the local violence prevention offices, we can work with other state agencies, and again, this whole government approach to really make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and we're leveraging the services that are currently available and the funds that we have available to try to meet the needs of our communities.
And this office hasn't been without some pushback. I want to kind of read you a quote here from the Assembly Speaker, Robin Vos.
It takes a bureaucrat to think that another government agency is actually going to be effective. I think what we need to do is to increase funding for our police and public safety services, not create a whole bunch of touchy-feely bureaucrats that are going to go around wasting time, wasting money.
What's your response to that?
I think it's unfortunate. However, I think the effects of violence prevention efforts speak for themselves. We have measures that are performance measures in place that can measure the effectiveness of these grants and see the outcomes. This work has been done before, and we know that it's effective, and we have, again, agencies across the state that are doing this work and are making an impact on their community, and the point of this office is to expand that reach so that we hopefully see less violence and hopefully one day, don't see the mass shootings that we're unfortunately, seeing across the country and across the world. So it's unfortunate that they feel that way, but I think we'll speak for ourselves when we have the grants awarded and we can see the impact that they have on their community.
And I want to talk to, as we head into 2026, what are some key priorities for your office?
First priority is getting the grants awarded and making sure that they have the support in place to carry out their objectives of their grant, and then measuring their effectiveness. I think getting feedback on what is and isn't working well. As I mentioned, that collaboration not only with state agencies, but across all areas of the state.
And since your office was created just a year ago, are there resources that you're still asking the state legislature for right now?
At this time, we're only have one-time funding from ARPA, and that funding ends December 31st of 2026. So beyond that, we don't have any funding lined up. So it would be, helpful to have additional resources allocated from the state.
And I know that that's an issue that the Office of School Safety faced as well, was one-time funds, small funds going into the office, and something that some legislators have pushed for, gotten pushed back. Is that something you're anticipating too with your office, is a little bit of back and forth with the state legislature?
There's no telling. I think what is really critical to understanding is, again, we're seeing a fluctuation at the federal level, and programs are experiencing this fluctuation of unreliable funding from both the federal government and from the state government, and that's leading to challenges where they're having a hard time keeping staff because staff need something that's more secure, and again, that ultimately impacts communities. So what I would hope is that we can see long-term stable funding so that folks can rely on this funding in the future and know that there's going to be a consistent opportunity to apply for the funding.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Grant applications are due January 16th. Our full conversation is up right now on channel3000.com. And in the years since the school shooting, lawmakers at the state capitol have introduced various forms of gun regulation, but much of it has stalled. However, this month, a state lawmaker that represents the ALCS district is looking at a different approach to school safety.
Schools should be a safe place.
That sentiment is the core reason why Marta Hansen volunteers with Moms Demand Action, a gun reform advocacy organization.
We truly believe in a holistic approach to this. It's going to take access to mental health care. It takes safety measures.
And that's why Representative Sheila Stubbs is proposing these 4 bills.
We need to come into schools and be helpful. It's taking the route that the community asked me to take.
One of the bills would create pre-recorded, standardized lockdown announcements. Another would require that every school safety plan includes procedures for notifying the students and their families in the event of an emergency. The third would create a grant program to support volunteers in schools and help students find a trusted adult. And the final proposal would create grants to support school counselors looking to continue their education in mental and behavioral health.
And one of those bills that I rolled out specifically came from the student.
Representative Stubbs says the bills came out of a community listening session that took place just a month after the shooting at Abundant Life Christian School. It was standing room only as people spoke to lawmakers and local leaders about what they want to see to make schools safer.
People came, they showed up, they spoke, from students to community leaders to superintendents to the county elected officials to law enforcement.
And a year later, Hansen says she's looking to find solutions to an issue that's not inevitable, but preventable.
And we work as a community to make our children and everyone safer.
Now, these pieces of legislation are currently just circulating for co-sponsorship. I also reached out to the Speaker's office for comment about gun and school safety legislation. He was not available for an interview. And next on For the Record, the case against 2 former Trump aides in the so-called fake elector scheme in Wisconsin 5 years ago is heading to trial. We take you to the courtroom when we come back.
Record with host Ellie LaLiberte.
Well, the case against some former Trump aides in the so-called fake elector scheme in Wisconsin 5 years ago is heading to trial. That scheme was a plan to submit paperwork falsely claiming that President Trump won Wisconsin in the 2020 presidential election. Prosecutors say these are the 3 men that helped organize that fake electors plan 5 years ago. All 3 were scheduled for a preliminary hearing on Monday. After hearing testimony from an agent with the Wisconsin Department of Justice, a Dane County judge found probable cause to move forward with the case against former Trump attorney Jim Troupis and former Trump aide Mike Roman. However, Kenneth Chesebro's preliminary hearing, another former Trump attorney, was postponed. The move to delay comes after arguments about if statements Chesebro previously made to prosecutors could be used in court.
This would have been the proper subject matter for a motion to dismiss a year ago when complaints were filed. This is a clear sandbag. This is all for the purpose of media attention and to cause fireworks to go off in a courtroom today.
All 3 men are facing 11 felony forgery charges. Each of the charges carries a maximum penalty of 6 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. According to the Associated Press, the 3 claim they did not commit a crime and were just trying to keep all their options open in case a court ruled that Trump actually had won Wisconsin. The Dane County judge said he wanted to hold a separate hearing about Chesebro's comments.
It just seems logical to me if the states obtained statements from an individual who is under some compulsion legally in another case, another court, and is acting with an understanding as to what their statements can result in, that it would violate that to utilize those statements.
Monday's hearing comes a week after former Trump attorney Jim Troupis unsuccessfully tried to have the judge removed and the case moved to another county. And notably, Wisconsin's case is moving forward even as election interference cases in Michigan and Georgia have stalled. And the U.S. Department of Justice is suing the District of Columbia and 3 states, including Wisconsin. The lawsuit is a part of the DOJ's effort to collect detailed voting data and other election information across the country. Last week, the Wisconsin Elections Commission voted against the Justice Department's request for the data. Both Republicans and Democrat commissioners voiced their concerns. And in the state Senate this week, Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu announced a special committee to investigate the Wisconsin Department of Justice. According to a press release, the special committee on the Oversight Committee of the DOJ will look into the operations, priorities, and external influences affecting the department.
They've taken some money from special interest groups to hire attorneys that aren't part of the Department of Justice that are filing, we believe, frivolous lawsuits around the state of Wisconsin. So we want to look into if there's state funding going into this. It's important to protect taxpayer money.
4 Republicans were named to the committee by LeMahieu, while the 2 remaining seats were filled by Senate Minority Leader Dianne Hasselbein. LeMahieu also told me he has not talked with anyone in the DOJ about the committee. Attorney General Josh Kaul now calling it a political stunt.
I'm happy to talk about the work that we're doing, but at the same time, it's disappointing that at a time when there are major issues that our legislature could be addressing, from the cost of living to common sense gun safety measures to funding for schools to so many other important issues, instead there's this partisan pro-pollution.
The UW-Madison La Follette School of Public Affairs is offering a new undergraduate major next year, but the program is unique. In an increasingly polarized political landscape, its curriculum will focus on civil dialogue, working across differences, and finding common ground. I sat down with the school director earlier this week. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to get started by just breaking down what is this new major.
Great. So this new major is in public policy. It's going to be offered by the University of Wisconsin here at Madison. And one of the neat things about this public policy major is that it's the first in our state.
What's the goal of this major?
So the goal is really to educate the next generation of public policy leaders. So I think we all know that there's a lot of challenges facing our country today and our state. And we need to have students who are thinking about those public policy issues in a really informed and educated way, and also have the skills of being able to talk across the political divide.
How do you teach something like that?
Yeah, so we're super excited about this, what I'm going to call a really innovative part of our undergraduate major. So our undergraduate major is going to be filled with classes that are more typical to public policy education. So evidence, quantitative reasoning, communication skills. But we're also going to center this idea of talking across the political divide. And we're going to do so in a class that it's a required class, so every one of our majors is going to take it. And it's also going to be open to all UW-Madison undergrads. And the class is called Advancing Public Policy in a Divided America. And it's centered on first learning about polarization. How has political polarization affected policymaking here in the United States? And it's maybe from a more theoretical book learning standpoint. And then we're going to relatively quickly pivot in that class in order to have it be more skills-based. So students are going to actually practice debating different controversial policy issues.
And you kind of touched on this, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. I think it's super interesting that this course is mandatory for this major. Talk to me about why it's required, why these skills are absolutely necessary to get a degree in this major.
We had the advantage of saying, what are the skills that we need now? Not looking backwards. What if people had created these majors in the past? What do they need now? And our faculty quickly came to the understanding that this idea of talking across the political divide was absolutely necessary. So our mission at La Follette is evidence-based policymaking. And we realized we couldn't get to that mission without people being able to sit down and talk to each other.
It sounds like in a class like this, emotions could get high, tensions could get a little heated. Is that part of this learning experience and this major too? Is if you move through that, you're learning how to deal with different personalities, because that comes in play in politics and in policy making.
Absolutely. That's part of, think about the normal demographic of a college student at UW-Madison. We're talking about an 18-year-old to a 22-year-old. And a lot of those folks have been raised in social media. It's so easy to get into your own little bubble in social media and have your issue areas and your positions and your values reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And we're not trying to change anyone's values as part of this class, but we do want to open people's curiosity and their eyes to other points of view. And we think that's really important in order to move the needle.
And I want to just kind of wrap up our conversation with one last question here for you, which is what would make this major a success?
If we can educate the next generation of leaders and send them out into society, have them poised and ready when their number is called to serve our state, serve our local communities, serve our country here in the United States, we will call this a success.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
That was a condensed version of our interview. You can find the full conversation up right now on channel3000.com. And Madison and Fitchburg voters encountered a little sticker shock when they saw their December property tax bills. That's after voters approved a referenda for the Madison School District last year. On December bills, tax levies across all school districts combined rose to more than $6 billion. The Wisconsin Policy Forum analyzed data from all 421 Wisconsin school districts. They found Madison's property tax hike alone accounted for 17% in the state's total increase, making it the biggest jump in 30 years. That means some Madison homeowners had to fork over an additional $750 to $1,000 in December. But WPF says there also could be a trickle-down effect for renters.
In some markets, a lot of that tax can get passed on to the renters. They don't necessarily have a lot of choices. Other markets, a little more sensitive to price, not so much of that will get passed on to the renter.
For the record, we'll be back after this. And before you go, Dane County is launching a new pilot initiative to provide community-based and intensive support for at-risk youth. Wednesday, County Executive Melissa Agard announced the Assessment, Treatment, Transition, and Aftercare program. The program approaches juvenile justice by emphasizing early intervention, individualized support, and accountability paired with care. The 6-month program integrates assessment, treatment, transition, and aftercare into a single chain of care focused on rehabilitation and long-term stability.
ADA reflects the values of folks here in Dane County. We believe in prevention. We believe in dignity. We believe in allowing people to achieve their dreams. We also believe in accountability, paired with care and compassion. And we believe that young people deserve real opportunities to succeed.
Participants will be housed at the Juvenile Detention Center in a dedicated wing with access to skill-building community service, employment opportunities, and therapy. And that'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can watch full episodes of the show as well as expanded interviews on our website, channel3000.com. Have a great rest of your weekend. For the record, I'm Ellie LaLiberte.
This has been For the Record.